Hi, welcome to A Cast for Crows, a Game of Thrones inspired podcast on deadscreen.net. I'm Alexa.
I'm Joe.
I'm Drew. No, I'm Drew.
I'm Joe.
So I'd like to take a moment and hold a moment of silence for the Game of Thrones that we once knew, because I believe that without the book material, the stuff that made Game of Thrones so great, the show, as a show, is just gone, and the show we know it is just changed. It's like from when the book readers, when you guys went from all new stuff, you're just like, oh, they're two different mediums now. Like, I feel like they're almost two different shows now because of just the way I felt during this whole episode. Like, I don't want to jump ahead, but I was not worried at all for, like, a majority of the characters, which is very, very out of place for this show. Like, I mean, even earlier on in the season, we were worried for Jaime at one point, and he was just standing in a room with a bunch of people, and, like, Jon is getting smushed, and I was just like, well, he's not going to die. They already killed him, and it's just not going to happen. So, R.I.P. Game of Thrones. I will enjoy this new show, whatever it's called.
Lord of the Thrones.
Lord of the Thrones. Speaking of Lord of the Thrones, there were so many parallels from the Lord of the Rings films in this episode that I was like, what the heck is going on? What am I watching? Like, they were like little shots, there were musical choices, then even like big thematic things that were, I felt ripped straight from Lord of the Rings. You know, when I don't want to get ahead.
Well, in all fairness, a lot of Game of Thrones is because of Tolkien, because the George R.R. thing, like, he added the R.R. because of Tolkien.
Right. And as a book and a universe as a whole, you can tell there's a lot of similarities, but visually, this is the first time that it was, like, almost painfully obvious that there were so many of these similarities. Not that I'm complaining, but they were just like, you know, there were shots with a really low sort of music going on, and they sort of shot the lower part of the horses running. You know, that was not ripped straight from it, but that really closely mirrored Faramir, you know, doing the one last run into Gondor in the second or third movie. It was like right from that. And then when Littlefinger shows up, you know, it's just like Gandalf showing up in Helm's Deep with, you know, the Rohirrim riders just like wreaking havoc, you know, when everybody out there seemed screwed.
Get it, Andy, you're a nerd.
Yeah. Just lots of similarities.
Okay, I can see what you're saying. I got that feel, and maybe it's because I really liked Lord of the Rings that I didn't mind it.
Right, I didn't mind it.
Honestly, I thought this was one of the most exciting episodes. But I see what you're saying. I get that.
I mean, visually, I thought it was stunning, but
yeah, it was beautiful.
I think something Andy said a couple of weeks ago about how the show seems to be increasingly playing it safe, I think that was in effect in this episode more than any other in the entire series so far.
I agree. I
don't want to get too much into it yet, but
yeah, I mean, we speculated all these deaths. We were only right about like one or two of them, so I see what you mean by that too.
So I guess it technically wasn't an episode set in one place. For the other ones, did they have little bits and pieces of other areas too, or were they all just set at the one battle place?
I'm trying to think. I think they were all just in that one battle place. Like, I think
so we sort of got a little bit of a different intro to this. So we saw some stuff go on in Meereen, where the Meereen storyline at least sort of looks like stuff's happening again.
Looks like it's coming to an end, which is awesome.
Right. So the dragons are all out. Dragon, and Drugon. Dragons.
Close enough.
So, I mean, what do we need to take from the whole Meereen thing?
I mean, I think we should give honorable mentions. I think Grey Worm's, like, moment where we thought that he was going to kill that one guy and wound up killing the other two for being traitors was badass. I know that Joe and I were talking when the dragons, all of them were showing, we were like, hell yes, thank God it's not just Drogon anymore. Joe, anything you'd like to add about the dragons?
They're freaking ginormous now.
They're huge. That was one of the things I noticed. When Drogon showed up, I was like, God damn, that's a huge dragon. I think also one thing that I thought, and I don't know if anyone else thought this, but like the dragons, like not Drogon, like Viserion and Rhaegal, looked pretty damn bare, and I think they need writers right now.
Well, we know Drogon has his writer because he's finally, like, it seems official that he's, like, completely loyal and in tune with Daenerys, so
Yeah.
that alone is going to make her, like, 1,000 times more dangerous when she gets to Westeros. But yeah, it was nice seeing the other dragons finally out again, if nothing else. As far as Meereen, I really liked what they did in this episode just because it finally moved quickly.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, it's been moving so slow, and
It wasn't
they
just
finally
like Tyrion.
they just gave us a resolution out of nowhere.
Yeah, if it wasn't just like Tyrion, Grey Worm, and Missandei drinking and joking around over stupid things, it was like we actually got something.
Worthwhile scenes, great job, guys.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to talk about the Greyjoy, Targaryen, Tyrion thing. I think that was an interesting alliance.
It was a great scene because, I mean, first off, it's clear that Daenerys and Yara have a lot in common, as they discussed.
Yeah.
Both having fathers who were kings, and they were crap kings, but were also murdered by quote-unquote usurpers. And they're also both fighting, they're women fighting to become rulers in a world that's, like, most of the world has always fought against women in charge, so they have a lot in common, and I think that's why they were able to strike up an instant bond. And I'm pretty sure Dany was also impressed with Yara's audacity to outright flirt with her, and I know the internet, like, exploded almost as soon as that happened, and I want to note that it is possible we could get this because they made Show Yara gay, so based on that, but also in the books, I can now reveal that Daenerys has bisexual leanings, let's just say, so they could definitely incorporate it. They could incorporate it into the show if they wanted to, but I don't see, like, they could be like BFFs or maybe have a sex scene or something like that, but I don't see any full-on relationship just because Dany's storyline, like her entire arc, has always been about her independence. And so, like, she's never been, like, even with Drogo, she wasn't tied down to him very long, and it's always been about her independently fighting to reclaim the throne for the Targaryens. So,
I mean,
but we could see something.
I think there could be some kind of relationship, whether it be short-lived or purely sexual or whatever. Because I don't really see what, like, aside from giving us, like, a token lesbian character, like, what the point of making Yara gay. The episode, like, we find out the episode before she meets Daenerys. So, like, unless it's just to have, like, a token LGBT character, like, I think it makes sense that something might come from that.
It's interesting, too, that they decided to introduce this information about Yara when the only other gay character I can think of in the show is Loras, and he's probably going to die soon. I think it's an interesting alliance. It obviously came together very easily, but all I will say is you guys would be fools if you rule out Euron that quickly.
What does that mean? I mean, I know who Euron is, and I but if Daenerys and Yara and Theon are all, like, actually in an alliance, what is the actual issue?
Because Euron
Daenerys has dragons.
Yeah, but
so I
don't know about it.
And so from a show perspective, Daenerys has dragons and an almost equivalent amount of ships if they're taking a bunch of the slavers' ships and Theon and Yara's ships. So if they have a relatively equal sea force, I mean, there's no way that Euron has as many warriors as the Dothraki and, you know, the Unsullied and all that stuff. So, like, I don't understand what the actual issue is. Plus, she has dragons. There's dragons are like.
I just think that it's not gonna be as easy as just that, because like the masters knew that Daenerys had dragons, but like they didn't think it through. I think Euron's gonna be more calculating than that. And
how are we supposed to know that from the show, though? We've seen
not.
it for like 10
That's
seconds.
the thing. We're not. Right now, we don't know all that much. What I do know about Euron, without having read any spoilers or anything, because I'm trying to stay away from it as much as possible, is that he's supposed to be far worse than Ramsay. So, I'm just running with that.
Yeah, but
I don't.
she's
I
dragons.
I think it makes sense that Euron would pose a threat because we need a new evil to hate. And if he's just gonna get burnt up to crisp by dragons, I don't see the point of introducing him at all.
Andy, all I can say is, and this is with book information, is that he does pose a significant threat to Daenerys. I can't say how yet because they're probably saving it for next season, but he does pose a significant threat.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. So
we're heading north.
Yeah, and then we stayed there for a bit, and some stuff went down. So Ramsay and Jon had this cool little scene. He call it the War Council, or was that when they were meeting afterwards?
That's when they were meeting
Anyways,
afterwards.
Right, where they all met on horseback, and basically Jon challenged Ramsay to like a one-on-one fight. Ramsay was like, well, my army's going to beat yours, so I'm not going to do that. And then Jon's like, well, your guys aren't really going to fight for you if you wouldn't fight for them. But that didn't really seem to be an issue. But he just wanted to get Ramsay mad, so wanted to play some mind games.
And they didn't work.
Sansa was basically like, you're just wasting your time. It's not going to work. He was like, whatever. Turns out that Jon was wrong.
Yeah. I think also, like, one thing that's important to mention is, like, just what we've seen in this episode. Like, how much Sansa has grown as a character and how ruthless she's getting. Like, even her just saying to Ramsay, like, enjoy sleeping tonight. You're never sleeping again. Like, screw you. Like, I guess we can talk about it later, but I think it just attests to, like, how much power Sansa is, like, obtaining over time.
So, I have a slightly relevant question. Remember a couple seasons ago, she, like, did something awesome and then dyed her hair black?
Mm-hmm.
When did she dye it back? Like, I barely remember that.
She washed it out.
All I remember...
when she got to the Boltons.
Oh. He just, like, washed her hair and she was like, okay, and then she was, like, went back. Because I remember at that point I was like, whoa, Sansa's sort of turning into this cool character, and then she, like, regressed a bit, and I just couldn't place the timeline together.
I don't think it was, like, yes, it was awesome that her hair was black and everyone was like, this bitch. But it was more to, like, hide her identity. So once she didn't need to hide it anymore, she just washed it out. It wasn't, like, actual dye. We have to consider, like, the time period.
Right. I just thought it was more of, like, ooh, look, her hair's black now because she's stronger. Yeah, she's, like, more of a badass or whatever.
Yeah, no,
they
did that on purpose because she had to pretend to be Littlefinger's bastard daughter named Elaine.
Yeah.
And then when Littlefinger chose to, like, present her, so to speak, to the Boltons and reveal that she was alive, then it wasn't necessary to have the dark hair anymore.
So I really thought we were going to lose Tormund this episode because they gave him a bunch of, like, good, like, comic relief scenes, basically, like, tension relieving scenes. You know, the whole thing about him not knowing the battle plans. Jon was basically like, they can't hit us from the sides, you know, like, and then, you know, trying to get Davos to go drink with him and, you know, wished him good shitting and all that stuff. Like, it was good tension relieving things to make you go, that Tormund character, man, I like him. It's like they were setting him up for us to lose him, And as much as I like that character, I'm actually disappointed he managed to make it through the whole thing.
Yeah, it's funny because Joe and I started talking throughout the episode, and he said, Davos and Tormund had a sweet moment, so one of them's gonna die. And then we didn't lose either.
From, like, the way this show and shows like that work in general, like, that is the perfect time to be like, oh, look, nice little happy time. You like these two guys, remember them? And then, like, they're just trying to pull on your heartstrings a little, so when you lose them, it's a little worse.
And thing is, I got scared at one point because it seemed like Tormund was out. Like,
Right. And that's why it would have been awesome if he had, like, this valiant, you know, went out in glory sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, we really only lost 2 people, one of which, like, I think everybody in the entire world assumed he was going to die because there was not a way he was going to make it out. So they're really, as exciting as this episode was in terms of the way the battle was shot and what went down, we didn't lose a whole lot of... We didn't lose anybody, basically. Like, we lost relatively minor characters in terms of, like, how often we see them and interact with them in the show.
Yeah, you talked a couple weeks ago about how the showrunners have started playing it safe, and I think we saw that play out in this episode, like, more than any other. And kind of like you said, like, we drew up this list of characters and who all we thought was going to die, and I feel like in past seasons, they would have taken out Tormund, they would have taken out Davos, they would have taken out a couple more. And, like Rickon, we all knew he was going to die. Like, yes, it's sad because he's a young Stark, but we didn't see him on screen that much. Ridiculous.
I mean, Rickon was one of these he was one of these characters. Rickon was one of these characters that, like, in terms of the whole show and the story, like, Sansa was right. He poses the most threat to Ramsay's legitimacy and all that stuff. But in terms of us show watchers, like, the kids had, like, what, 4 minutes of total screen time? Maybe 5? Like, we've never seen...
Well, Rickon never played, like, an important part because he never really talked. He was, like, the baby brother.
It's just one of those things that, like, and on paper, yes, I understand how he was a significant character, but in terms of us as just the show watchers, he was a very easily expendable character that people could convince themselves held weight. So, like, I did not think there was any chance that he made it out alive.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't super shocked by it. His death was a little bit hokey to me, just because it seemed so easily avoidable that it's just one of those things that, like, oh yes, it works well for dramatic effect in the show. Yes, I get it, but come on. It's like when they were running away from the rolling ship in Prometheus, they just kept running in a straight line, and you could just turn, not go straight, and be fine. Just bugged me a little bit.
Yeah, that was my biggest issue, was that, like, we already knew Ramsay was an expert marksman, and we knew, or most of us knew, Rickon was going to get killed in that sequence, but he could have at least made it a little more difficult by zigzagging.
Right. Like, yeah, but I mean, or just, you know, shoot the first arrow into Rickon's leg so he can't run fast. Like, you know, just do something to make it slightly more believable. Like, this one was just dumb. This one felt so TV show-ish or, like, safe movie-ish that it just did not feel like the Game of Thrones of old.
See, like, I don't think he could have been shot in the leg, because the whole point of him purposely missing was so that Jon would run up to him and then his people would follow, so he would fall into their trap.
Right. But or, you know, tie his legs up or something. Do something to slow him down and not...
Yeah, I mean...
not just make him an idiot.
I think that's exactly...
But they have a habit of turning characters into idiots this season.
Well, I think that's exactly what Sansa was talking about when she was like, don't underestimate him. Like, he's not stupid. Like, he might be a psycho, but he's not crazy. And he's not stupid. He is definitely crazy. But he's not stupid. And Jon, like... And she even said, like, yeah, he's our brother, but there's no way he's gonna let him out alive. And Jon just, like, lost all sense because it was his brother and he wanted to save him. but like there was nothing he could do, and he fell right into his trap. That's basically like the whole point of it. But yeah, I think make it a little harder for Ramsay, because just running straight wasn't the smart. I would have, and maybe it's because I haven't been in that situation, but like my instinct would have been to zigzag because he's shooting straight. If you go straight, that's easier for him.
Right, and like I don't really know how much he could hear, but the moment he let an arrow loose, I'm assuming you'd hear some sort of like whoosh or something.
Mm-hmm.
So change direction because the arrow can't track you. So just, I don't know. It just bugged me a little. And then we got the whole heroic Jon thing where he, somehow survived not getting hit by a wave of arrows and just got up and like, prepped to fight. And Tormund showed up with the rest of the wildlings and whoever else was fighting with them. There was that. It was a really good fight scene, like in terms of how it looked and how interesting it was. But I never once felt that like, oh gosh, Jon's in trouble. Like worry that I felt about every character every time they've gotten into a battle anywhere in the show, ever.
Yeah, I see that.
Like in Hardhome last year, you were worried about all those characters while that stuff was going on. And this one, it was just like, you're like, well, it'll be interesting to see how he gets out of this. Which that was my driving interest in that those scenes was like, I know he's going to get out of it, so it'll just be interesting to see how it happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that is like worth noting is like, we've been told like time and time again like how much of a like good swordsman that Jon is, and that definitely proved it. Like he was outnumbered like crazy, and still he was like killing people left and right. But I do have to disagree, and maybe it didn't end up happening, but I was terrified for Tormund. I thought he was gone.
Right, and Tormund was a little different. I was speaking more specifically towards Jon.
Well, yeah, I think with Jon, we don't really fear for his life anymore. I think just because at this point we're all pretty sure he has a greater storyline that like basically is the whole point of the show.
Right.
And I think knowing that has ruined that for us.
Exactly, which is something that I thought the show did so well before. But I completely agreed with you. Where like when Tormund sort of got sliced, and then they pulled him back, and then whoever Ramsay's like second-hand man guy was that they sort of built up, when they showed up and him and Tormund started to fight, you were like, oh man, this is probably it. Like I don't know if Tormund makes it out of this. And in that specific fight, I was worried.
Yeah.
But, he made it through it, and he was fine.
As much as I love Tormund, and I think we've mentioned it before, I was kind of disappointed that he made it out.
Right.
So.
I mean, I didn't want him to go, but at the same time, it just... So it's like, when Arya got stabbed, every time a character gets hurt, and they're okay... The next time a character gets hurt, you're less worried about it.
Yeah.
Every time a character's in a battle and they're just like fine, you get less and less worried about it. And that's what this season has done a bad job of, is I feel like the consequences have not been nearly as dire as they've been in the previous 5 seasons in this season. Bad stuff has happened to people, but they've gotten out of it relatively easily or without much trouble. Arya... If Arya had that same thing happen to her in seasons 1 through 4, she'd be done. Like,
yeah.
Nope, that didn't happen to anybody then. And now it's just like, it's just like, oh man, Tormund's a little beat up, Jon's a little beat up, and we lost, a quote-unquote throwaway character in 1-1. So we're a little bit sad, but overall everything's great. It's just like, it just bums me out.
Joey.
Yeah,
like I don't.
Yeah. It's like you said a couple of weeks ago about how they've started playing it safe, and I thought that was the issue in this episode, was that the only 2 characters we lost were completely expendable characters who were widely expected to die anyway, plus Ramsay. And
right.
like I never feared for Davos. I never feared for Jon, however much fake blood they tried to put on his face.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up not fearing for Sansa. And like, I'm obviously very happy with the outcome. It was very satisfying, but it was also completely predictable because as soon as Jon rushed in, he had to be all honorable, and as soon as Rickon died, Tormund's like, no, don't do it. And then Jon just kind of rushes in on his own, a la Ned Stark, and we saw how well that worked for him. And I don't know. It was just like we even speculated, like, they can't win this battle unless Littlefinger and the Vale's army comes in. That's what happened.
Right. Mm-hmm. I think that word predictable is the perfect example.
It was definitely predictable.
Like, it's one of those things that a couple seasons, like when they were surrounded by Ramsay's men and then like the pile of dead bodies, and they were doing that slow like march in, there was that like exciting tension, but there wasn't that like pure dread tension that the show had done such a good job of setting up in previous seasons. If that situation happened 2 or 3 seasons ago, I would have had a heart attack. Like, it would have been so stressful. But it was just like, I was just waiting for Gandalf to ride over the mountain and save everybody. And sure enough, Sansa rides over the mountain and it was very predictable. It felt like a Lord of the Rings fight where you weren't worried about any of the characters. You just had fun watching it, which, is good. But at the same time, it's not what made Game of Thrones the great show it was.
Also, Alexa, you say you have an answer to this, and I hope you do.
Okay.
I want to know how... I feel like that entire battle could have been avoided and could have been won much easier if Sansa had just told Jon beforehand, hey, I've got a shit ton of knights coming from the Vale pretty soon. Let's just wait a few more hours, and then we'll attack them, and we'll destroy them no problem, and probably save a lot more lives. And yet, they didn't do that, and they just rushed in with the army they had. I want to know why Sansa didn't say anything.
So I think that was a very calculated move, because I think that had the Vale's army been there, then there's a chance that they would have all fallen into that trap. But with the, like, surprise of, like, they were already, like, Jon's army was already in the trap, so the Vale's army could come in, swoop in, and, like, save him last minute. I think if Jon had known, he would have, like, incorporated his already, like his plan that he already had into the Vale's army, and then there would have been no way of getting out. So I think that's why she didn't tell him. Because I think she knew that Ramsay was going to plan something and throw them for a loop, and they weren't going to be able to get out of it. But with the Vale's army coming in last minute, it would have done it. Like, it would have saved them.
I don't know. All I see from that ending to that battle is they repeated the same trick for the 3rd time now in this series. Because if you'll remember, they did the same thing at Blackwater when Tywin's army rode in at the last minute and crushed Stannis' army. And then in Season 4, when Stannis came in at the last minute and crushed the Wildling army to save the wall. And I feel like it was just a literal repeat of what we've already seen.
I don't think it was a new move, but I think it was very calculated.
I mean, it all really depends on if Jon falls for Ramsay's trick.
But I think Sansa knew that he was going to, because she even said, like, he's going to trick you, and you're not going to know what you're going to do. Like, I think in that moment she had considered telling him, but then when he was being, like, headstrong about it, she was like, well, fuck this, I'm going to have my own plan.
Yeah, I could see that.
Jon just acted exactly like Ned Stark would have, and while it's honorable, it's also foolish when you're dealing with someone like Ramsay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's ironic about the whole thing, is that even though they ended up winning the war, and of course we got our satisfying death for Ramsay, he, like, completely outwitted Jon every step of the way on the actual battlefield. Like, it wasn't until the Vale came in, and then Ramsay goes back to Winterfell, and he's like, oh, okay, we'll just withstand a siege, and then 1-1 comes and knocks on the front door.
Well, I had a weird... Like, I felt weird about Ramsay this whole episode, because while I definitely hate him as a character, and I did not want to see Jon's side lose, like, I was impressed at sort of that whole plan that he had concocted, and how it all basically was executed flawlessly. Like, he had a plan, and it was executed, and if it wasn't for, Magical Sansa and the Unicorn army that showed up right at the end, Like, his thing would have worked perfectly, and he would have killed all the, like, it would have
Yeah.
been a huge success for him. So, like, I had this weird respect that he was able to pull things off with such efficiency. And then even when 1-1 broke down the door, he knew he was done, but he still, like, took as much time as he could to be as big of a dick as he could before he got, you know? And it's just one of those things, like, I don't like the character, but it was just like, damn, Ramsay really Ramsay'd it up this episode.
Yeah, I think when you have no emotions, it's easy to think logically.
Right.
So Jon doesn't have that, like, luxury. And we saw that with Ramsay, because he's incredibly intelligent when it comes to war, because he didn't have any emotion clouding his thoughts.
Right. I mean, there was even a good scene with Davos who was like, you know, don't shoot our arrows because we're going to shoot our own people. And then it was just Ramsay saying pull or fire or whatever it was, like 5 times in a row, showing that he's just going to pepper the field with arrows and he doesn't care who he hits.
I was scared for friendly fire in that, or I guess not friendly fire because it's not guns, but, like, how could they tell them apart in, like, those split seconds where they're just kind of throwing their, like, swords around?
Right. Well, that's why there was 1 or 2 scenes where, like, it looked like Jon pulled somebody off of another person, but then stabbed some. Like, I was like, who are you? Like, whose team? Like, I could not tell in the middle of some of those battle scenes who he was actually fighting.
I have a question for you guys. I have no idea who it was. Do you know who was on the 5 crosses that were burning before the battle?
Are we supposed to know?
Yeah, I thought maybe at first I was like, maybe one of those is Rickon, but, like, I don't.
That's what I thought.
I
at
don't
first.
think it's anyone that, like, is important. I think it's probably just, like, one of his prisoners, or, like, some of his prisoners, and he just flayed them to be like, look, it's our thing, flayed man, and he's on fire. Like, I think it was just a scare tactic that obviously
talk about a house
didn't work.
That, like, really is just destined to be bad people. Like, I feel like that logo's, like, generic bad guy logo number 1.
Yeah, I don't know. I just, like, obviously, like everyone else, I was very satisfied with the outcome. I just thought the way it was written just had a lot of holes in it, and kind of like Andy said, it didn't have that usual Game of Thrones feel where I had this outright fear for the entire episode. I didn't fear for most of the characters. And so I felt a little bit let down in that sense.
Right.
So
it's like, it's a weird thing to feel let down about, and I'm completely with you, but it's like, you're like, oh man, some of my favorite characters didn't die this episode. Like, it's like
you're happy they're alive because you love people like Davos and Tormund, but at the same time, it's like, usually in a Game of Thrones battle, like, a shit ton of your favorite characters are going to die, and that just didn't happen.
And it's clear that, like, that's something we expected was going to happen, but yeah, I see what you guys mean about that. I mean,
I guess it's good that, like, we've been conditioned to expect those big things, and that, like, if they don't happen, it's sort of, you know, now we can't really expect it to happen every battle or something, because I would see that having been an issue, but I left it a little underwhelmed, I guess.
I think also just, like, what I liked about it, like, yeah, it was great that the good guys, quote-unquote, won, but I think, like, and maybe it's just because I'm a woman, but, like, this episode was so empowering as a woman. It was, like, the episode of, like, badass women, like, one after the other, and, like, Sansa just, like, ending the episode being like, yeah, okay, yeah, your dogs aren't gonna eat you, like, screw you, and then he, like, his dogs obviously eat him. Like, I think it was just, like, and, like, just seeing, like, the smile on her face at the end, like, it just gave me, like, a post-episode high. Like, I was messaging Joe, and I was like, I can't even fall asleep right now. I'm still, like, on that Game of Thrones high.
Yeah, that smile was just, like, everything. Felt like a new Sansa was born right there.
Mm-hmm. Because, like, we've seen her progressing slowly, but, like, that was, like, the moment where you're like, she's not coming back from this. Like, she's ruthless, and, like, I love it.
I thought they were going to have Ghost.
We didn't even see
Ramsay.
Ghost this episode.
Right, like, but that's what I thought that instead of his dogs, they thought it was going to be Ghost or something.
See, the second he said that he starved his dogs for 7 days, I was like, well, bae.
Yeah.
Yeah, the show writers must have been like, well, how can we make sure Ghost lives and make it realistic? Oh, we'll just have him stay away from the battlefield completely.
But, like, this is a friendly reminder, kids. Don't starve your dogs because they will eat you after 7 days.
Yeah, that was the funny
They
thing. I
also
was
have-
thinking PETA probably enjoyed that episode.
Right.
Don't starve your animals or you'll suffer the consequences, damn it.
Those dogs had great timing. They let everybody say their things and then just went to town.
I thought, like, it was so funny how he thought, like, I'm sorry, no animal, if you starve it for 7 days, I don't care how much the animal loves you, is going to not eat you. It's their natural instinct to survive. So the fact that he was like, they're my dogs, they're not going to do anything to me, and Sansa was like, okay, we'll see about that. Thought that was such a great moment. And then his dog goes up to him at first and licks him, and you're like, oh, no, it's gonna be good, and then just, like, rips his face out, and you're like, okay, well, that's well-deserved.
Alexa, I know you wanted to talk about one of the last quotes Ramsay said, which was
yes.
something like, what was it, like, I'll always remain part of you, or something like that?
Yeah, something like part of me is in you, or something like that. This isn't a theory I have. This is a theory I've seen on the interwebs. But some people are speculating that that could have been, or that could have meant that Sansa was pregnant with Ramsay's, like, evil spawn. So, that's a possibility. I am not going to say whether I confirm or deny that possibility myself, because I don't know how I feel about it. I know people have been talking about it for a while now, saying that perhaps she's pregnant and that would be, like, the worst thing ever. But I don't know. So what do you guys take that to mean?
I don't even remember him saying that, so I kind of useless.
Typical Andy.
I'm gonna guess that that's not what that is, because the last handful of theories just haven't been batting a very good average. So I'm just gonna take that position out of consistency.
Hey now, who predicted that Rickon was gonna die? Who predicted that...
Everybody on the whole planet,
Who,
even people that didn't watch
who
the show.
Who predicted that Littlefinger was gonna come in at the last minute?
Yeah, but those are, like, grounded in reality almost. Some of your theories have been a little out there.
I don't know what you're talking about. But no, I took that quote to mean, I took it just kind of like, what he did to her will always stay with her, and, like, she'll never be able to get it out of her memory.
Yeah.
Right, and just from listening to what you guys were saying, that's sort of what I would have to take it as, just because he's like, I've damaged you, and you're not going to be able to fix it, so you have to live with that.
I took part of that also, like, kind of talking about how ruthless she's gotten, and how, like, it's because of him. So I think that's also just kind of like, now you've kind of gotten crazy like me, and that's awesome. And, like, I wouldn't say that she's definitely hasn't gotten to his extreme, but this is a whole other kind of ruthlessness that we wouldn't have seen with Sansa before.
Right. So on next episode,
Our finale.
I just watched it, and it sort of looks like Cersei's gonna have to, I guess there's no trial by combat, so she's just going to a regular boring trial, right?
I'm not so sure about that. Alexa, take it.
Okay, so we all remember that Qyburn said something about these rumors. This episode specifically, we got mention of that by Tyrion, who told Daenerys that her father had put all this wildfire underneath the city of King's Landing. Now that's what Joe and I are starting to think might be those rumors, and she's just gonna light the place up. And
when Tyrion and Daenerys talked about it, I feel like that all but confirmed that, right?
what?
That's what those rumors were?
Yeah.
Well, we already know there's wildfire under King's Landing because Tyrion had it made for the Battle of Blackwater, so he knows
Right.
it's there.
Yeah.
But maybe
But then
Cersei discovered it too.
Yeah, that's what we're thinking is happening. And I think also, like, stuff... I don't know if... Was it in the preview that we saw, like, actual wildfire? Or was that, like... Because I know that we saw some wildfire in, like, Bran's visions, but the Mad King never did anything with it. So that could be a vision of the future instead of a vision of the past.
Right, because in one of those visions, it looked like a whole store of wildfire was...
Yeah, and the Mad King
blowing up.
didn't ever let them... He didn't light them up.
He
True.
did use wildfire. At least book information, we know he used wildfire a lot. So
But
I think
did he,
I think
like-
it could be.
He just has-
I think it could be I think that could have been a past vision.
Right, so he used some, but he still has a leftover store of it.
Yeah, like he had a whole bunch. Like that was his favorite way to kill people and like torture them was wildfire. So
But, like, it looked like a place was exploding. Like, did he, like,
So-
explode, like, places with it? Or was it just, like, he used it to burn people?
Yeah, because in the Bran quote-unquote flashback, there was, like, the Mad King yelling, and then it was, like, a bunch of that green fire going down a tunnel. Like, that
Yeah.
it was blowing
And, like,
up.
didn't we see that in the preview now?
I don't know, did we?
I don't know. I might be confusing things. Like I said, it's hard for me to keep up with previews when they're out of context.
I don't know, like, that makes sense, because at least that's something that the show has subtly hinted at over the course of the season, that there's shit under the city, and now the last episode, the second to last episode, we're sort of, it's all confirmed. So that doesn't strike me as one of those theories that's all out there or anything. It seems to be, like, as I like them to do, they give us little bits and pieces, and we can sort of come to that conclusion ourselves without us having to know too much about it.
yeah, I could see her torching the place, and then like all the sparrows and her beloved Tommen die.
So, but doesn't that just, like, nuke King Landing as a whole?
Yeah, I think that would, like, destroy King's Landing.
And isn't that,
Well,
like...
the trial is taking place specifically in Baelor's Sept, like the home of, like that's where the High Sparrow typically hangs out, I think. So I don't know. I don't know if it would torch like all of King's Landing or not.
So she either just blows up that section or moves a bunch of it to that section and blows it up?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. We'll see how it plays out. I definitely see the wildfire being used in some way. So. And if it destroys Tommen, I think we've all come to the conclusion that he's in his last leg.
He was gonna die anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I think,
Yeah.
we already knew he was going to die. And I think this would just, like, complete, like, the sword. The, like, premonition that the witch gave her. And,
So,
like I've said,
go
she's
ahead.
basically been the cause of all her kids' death. So,
We also saw Melisandre's in quite a predicament because Davos is going to force her to
That
reveal
was-
what she did to Shireen.
Yeah, that was a little disappointing in this episode. It's like, oh, he found it, and then we didn't get much of it.
well, I think it's like they're
We had to
metal.
focus on the battle.
Yeah, I don't
first.
think he could be like, you know what? Screw this battle. Fuck you, Melisandre.
Yeah, he had to stay focused and survive that first. But it'll be interesting because we've already seen Jon, give a few other people the death penalty for murder.
For less, yeah.
So we'll see. Either way, Jon's probably going to piss someone off. Is going to piss somebody off. If he kills Melisandre, he's going to piss off Lord of Light, and if he doesn't kill Melisandre, Davos is going to be pissed. So
Yeah, I think if he does kill off Melisandre, I think that's something that you said, Joe. We have Thoros of Myr come in, and he's a Red Priest, so he could very easily replace Melisandre. So I don't think it's, like, outside of the realm of possibility.
So we didn't see any White Walkers.
Not today.
I'm a little disappointed. I had this whole big vision of Joe's theory being right. I convinced myself.
Andy, I told you that was how the season would end. It's not the finale yet.
Yeah, but we didn't even get a little hint. If it doesn't happen, I'm going to be angry now.
But, like,
I'm going to be as angry as when that thing didn't happen that made Alexa angry.
But
That's a lot of things.
No, I think I know what he's talking about. But didn't we see the Night's King in the preview?
I didn't. Did we?
I don't think we
know.
did.
I don't think so.
I'm so confused. I keep mixing this all up. See, I told you guys that unless it's in context, I don't get it. But I'm sure that we're going to get a little White Walker action this season, so...
I want a lot of White Walker action.
So we'll see if the wall comes tumbling down.
And we know the
hope
finale is
so.
supposed to be the longest episode of the season, so safe to say something big's going to go down.
Yeah.
Is it longer by, 3 minutes or, 15 minutes?
This one was by 3 minutes, so I would imagine it'd be closer to 15.
I don't remember. They just said it's definitely going to be the longest, so...
Well, this episode was already longer than usual, so...
We also saw
Okay.
Jaime in a place where I don't like. He's just kind of sitting there smiling as
With the phrase...
Walder Frey stands up and makes a toast saying, the Freys and the Lannisters send their regards. So I hope there's more to that than appears.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we're in for an epic finale. So...
We better be after a somewhat
Let's hope.
underwhelming season.
So, I mean... Yeah, it better be exciting.
I mean, it's called The Winds of Winter, so, as a book reader, I should be, really fearing major spoilers here.
Is that the name
Is
of
that
the
the
next
name?
book?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, let's have some shit go down.
No,
Didn't,
they can make it nice and boring.
Didn't George R. R.
No.
Martin, just release, part of a chapter, though?
Yes, he did a couple weeks ago.
Hopefully they incorporate some of that stuff.
They can't because it concerned a character who's not in the show.
Damn it! Is it the character I've been wanting to come in?
No.
Okay.
It's someone who actually made Dorne interesting.
Oh.
Dorne was never interesting.
But,
I don't believe
maybe
you.
that character can still come in. Don't we
No.
have... No?
They already confirmed that it's a she and she's been cut.
Oh,
They already confirmed it.
Okay. Not who I thought you meant.
I hope Varys pops up in our
That's what
season
I thought you meant.
finale. Because that would be, I know, what he does in the Book 5 epilogue is, that would be something where you guys would be like, holy shit. So, I would love for that to happen, but I'm not sure
Would it be
if
something
will.
that I would think is holy shit, or is it something you already told me, which you said wasn't going to happen?
This is not something I've spoiled for you.
Okay.
Don't spoil stuff
He
for her.
was like,
She
oh, it's
wants
not
it.
going to happen. No, because you were like, I was like, Joe, don't tell him anything if it's going to be a spoiler. And you're like, it's definitely not going to happen. And now you're like, oh, I think it might happen.
She asks
Is that
for
what you were
it.
trying to tell us? You were trying to tell me something earlier this season on an
Well,
episode.
it's not going to happen. I've come to terms with it.
But yeah, if this Varys thing, if they follow the books on that, you guys are gonna you guys will be shocked.
Good.
I hope so. It's been a slightly lackluster season.
I have to agree.
I don't know if it's just I like the episodes while I'm watching them, and I think it's you guys talking about them after. I'm like, stop ruining what I like.
You didn't realize that they actually weren't as good as they normally are?
I mean, I love this episode. It's still one of my favorite episodes just because it got a great ending.
Right, and I would say that in the scheme of Game of Thrones episodes, that battle was, outright one of the best. But it was just, the little
You
subtle
guys are
things
just
that Game
shitting
of
on
Thrones
the show
lost.
for me, and I'm getting really mad.
We're sorry, or at least
Who
I am.
knows if we'll even watch it next year?
Oh, I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah, I was joking.
I don't know. I need
Episode.
a book.
It was a joke.
I need book 6 so I can get back ahead of you guys.
No,
There's still
I
some
like that
stuff
we're
you're ahead of
catching up
us
to you.
with, so... And I mean, you're ahead of Andy and everything, so...
Yeah, you're ahead of me in show stuff.
Alright, guys. Valar Morghulis.